Hey everybody, Brian from Progressive Force Concepts here. Today we're going to talk about a little critical incident review. On Friday, July 26th in Beaverton, Oregon, an individual walked into the police station. He was under the influence of hallucinogenic mushrooms, and he said to the police officers that were on station that he needed help. And after this contact occurred, a conflict, a fight, a physical altercation ensued, during which time the suspect wrestled on the floor with up to as many as 6 police officers. He withdrew one of the police officers' weapon from his holster, actually discharged a round. The suspect was handcuffed, proceeded to break those handcuffs, and one of the officers ultimately sustained a shoulder injury. A lot of key elements are present in this critical incident that we can learn from. We can derive a lot. Not to mention PFC actually has a personal stake in this because our Director of Code 4 Combatives, Chad Lyman, had actually, prior to this incident, conducted training for the Beaverton, Oregon Police Department. The elements of Chad's training that they chose to employ to resolve the encounter performed exceptionally well. There were other areas that were lacking and require further training on their end, and again, we can all learn. We can learn a lot from this. Purpose of this video is not meant to tear down the police department or Monday morning quarterback their actions, but we would be remiss if we couldn't find the opportunity to take and learn something from this. One of the first things that stands out in the actual video is that not all the officers present are actually involved in the fight. That is a huge component. One of our core CQB or indoor combat principles is to get into that fight. We have 2 different types of danger. We have kinetic danger and when we have known danger. And when we have known danger, we have an actual suspect who is engaged actively in resisting or fighting or even aggressing law enforcement officers, responsible private citizens, or soldiers. It is the obligation of those present to aggressively get into the fight. We have a mantra that we also teach. There are 3 ways to win an encounter, which is to be first, to be smarter, or to cheat. If we can take and tip the odds in our favor by using more manpower, using our tactics and working angles, it's gonna come down in our favor. The notion of standing by idly and watching and not actually getting into the encounter is definitely something that's a cause for concern. If you consider a SWAT team responding to an armed suspect in a house, they're going to bring as many bodies with them as they possibly can. Just an overwhelming show of force to end the encounter in the shortest amount of time possible. This particular case took 6 minutes to get this individual suspect into custody. The next concept we want to address is weapon consciousness. There is an often standing mantra that's echoed to new cadets in law enforcement academies, and that is, what percentage of calls do you attend that are gun calls? And the answer to that question is 100% of all calls. Reason being, you're bringing the gun. Maintaining weapon consciousness has been a PFC core principle for years, since our inception. Always knowing that you have a gun on your hip, you have a knife, an impact tool, whatever it may be, and the manner in which I fight with someone may actually afford them access to that tool is certainly a cause for concern. Of great notice on this is that the actual officer who is disarmed in the encounter is not aware of the fact that he's been disarmed. He actually is not aware that it's actually his weapon that was used until well after the encounter is over. Also of interest, one of the few things that we can control in the fight is, of course, equipment. The equipment that we actually bring. And I want to talk about these trigger finger actuated holsters that still exist on the market out there, specifically the Blackhawk Serpa holster. If this holster was an over-the-counter medication, it would have been pulled by the FDA a long time ago. If this particular holster was a set of tires that was on minivans transporting citizens and children around the country, they would have been pulled for safety purposes from circulation long ago. We know of far too many incidences where individuals have shot themselves or others during presentation with this weapon. The weapon has become trapped inside of the holster due to fouling underneath the retention mechanism, or if the weapon is inserted backwards into the holster during one-handed manipulations, it can become stuck in the holster. And then we know of instances where the weapon has performed exactly as advertised, such as in this case, and it was defeated by the suspect with a grab. He accessed the weapon, defeated the mechanism, and instantly had the officer's weapon out and discharged a round. So we cannot say this enough. This is one of the reasons why PFC, at some inconvenience to some of our students, have chosen to take initiative and ban the usage of these holsters in our training programs, and we strongly encourage conscientious practitioners out there to do the same. Our Director of Combatives, Chad Lyman, spent time with this PD teaching the head pin technique. It is also interesting to note when watching the video that the head pin was not employed until later in the encounter, and when it was, it actually performed exceptionally well. One of the things that Chad also hammers is the fixation that officers oftentimes have upon putting handcuffs onto a suspect before the encounter has been won. There are only two types of people that should ever be restrained or put into handcuffs. Those type of people are people who are complying, and the second category of people are people who are unconscious or rendered unable to further resist. There is no existing technique to handcuff non-compliant people. It does not exist. As people violently flail their arms, their legs, they try to spit on you, they try to bite you, kick you, stab you, punch you, or disarm you, there is no technique that exists to putting handcuff on people. A great many officers have been injured in the process of constantly swiping, almost trying to catch butterflies with their handcuffs to take and handcuff adversaries. We've got to win the encounter before we can take and restrain the individual. So that's a key point that's a takeaway from this video. Our hat goes off to the men and women of the Beaverton, Oregon Police Department and law enforcement officers everywhere out there. You do a very, very serious job, a thankless line of work. We do think, though, that this video can be used both for Beaverton and for police departments and responsible private citizens at large to get some takeaways from this on their individual equipment setup, their individual tactics, and their team tactics, and ultimately their future training that's employed as well. We've also included a link to the video that is included in the comments section below the video that's listed right here. Take care. Stay safe.